Welcome back to the AAU Overtime Podcast. Jordan DeLuciano, as always, and joining me now, first time ever, we got a collaboration, the Hockey House Pod's very own Mackenzie Murphy. Mac, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining today.
This is awesome. Happy to be here. Been tuning in for a while now, so happy to be on the show.
Yeah, likewise. I've been keeping up for some time, back when, like, a little bit during my playing days. And then, you guys were kind of the inspiration for when myself and Farmingdale head coach Joe Mazey was the one that came up with this podcast idea, and Hockey House was part of that inspiration behind it. That's how we got to start at AAU.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, there's only, and like 500 teams across non-NCAA hockey right now. Like, it's tough to cover them all. So it was really cool to see you guys doing the overtime pod, and it helps us catch up on the AAU news that we might have missed. So we really love it.
It's like you said, it's a lot of teams to cover. Yeah, you got the entire AAU, you got the whole other league as well, what you're doing before that. So you got a lot on your plate for the Hockey House in terms of, I just have to stay with AAU, so I'm good. You got it. You're bouncing all over the place. So you got more to handle.
Yeah, definitely. And it's funny too, because when we first started doing it, it was during COVID, right? So like not everybody was playing. It was a lot easier to keep up with the news. And I remember those days, like the off season, we would be sitting there like, what are we going to talk about? And then this summer, the off season flew by, and then you flip the light switch and it's September, and all of a sudden now there's so many games, and it's tough to fill the notes every week because, they're 9 or 10 pages where we were used to starting the show with 2 to 4 pages. So love this time of year. Everyone's getting started, and a lot of excitement around the year.
Oh, it's a great time of year. Like the summer, I'm bored because there's no hockey. And before you know it, like I feel like just yesterday I was finishing up calling games at Nationals in March, and now we're back. Eventually throughout this episode, we're going to talk about this upcoming season, but it goes by so quick. And for you, before we get to the Hockey House pod and we start getting to AAU, Mac, what was your background? Where'd you start in hockey? Where'd you wind up playing throughout your career?
Yeah, so I grew up in northern New Hampshire, born and raised. That's where we're doing the pod now, in a town called North Conway, known for its skiing, but I played hockey growing up, and I was actually one of 7 kids in the Murphy family. My dad has been coach ever since, and we all grew up playing hockey, grew up in an area where high school hockey was king. Like I grew up and it was like, I want to play high school hockey. I want to win a state championship, and that was it. And then once I got to high school and I got a taste of that hockey, it was like, okay, what do I do after high school? And from there, I went and I did a PG year, which a lot of people aren't familiar with, basically like junior hockey mixed in with going to private school. And so I did that at Bridgeton Academy, had tremendous success there. And it was actually a guidance counselor at Bridgeton Academy that told me about, Club Hockey Avenue. It was like, hey, I know you want to go NCAA, but there are a lot of different paths, and the school that you're looking for doesn't really match with the schools that you're interested in hockey. So why don't you take a look here? And that was how I found Syracuse, played 4 amazing years there. And while I was there, I put that communications degree to the test and started the Hockey House pod.
Yeah, so you're at Syracuse, Hockey House pod starts. What was the inspiration? You always thought about growing up, maybe starting a broadcasting network for college hockey, or did this kind of happen in college, like you said, when communications came into play?
Right. It kind of accidentally happened. I remember listening to, Spit and Chicklets was a huge inspiration for what we do. And we kind of try to be the Spit and Chicklets for this level of hockey. And I remember they had a former Penn State player on the podcast who made it all the way to the ECHL, and he was on there telling some stories. And I'm like, I have more stories than that guy does after just 1 year of playing at this level. And so, I was like, if I have stories, I can't imagine what the kids at South Carolina have for stories. I can't imagine the kids at Stony Brook, the kids at UNLV, all across the country. We all have such a different lens that we see this game through. And I was like, we would never run out of interviews. And so I started talking to my dad about it. And he was like, well, not only that, think about how, an 18-year-old kid knows nothing about this level of hockey. All they know is NCAA Division III, Division I. You could open up a whole door of not only players, but parents as well. And use this as a teaching point for the hockey world. And so from there, it kind of combined as not only are we a players podcast, but we're informational as well. So we love covering the game, but we also love teaching people about, at each school and how they're different and what leagues they play and what conferences they play and where the national tournaments are. And it took off from there.
You know, like you said, that's a very important thing. It's not just NCAA hockey out there. And now people have a different avenue, not just for knowledge standpoint, like you wound up happening to you. You found a different avenue to play hockey in college hockey. And some of the places that the Hockey House pod, actually, before I get into that question, I was going to get into some tournaments maybe. But when did you start feeling maybe you had something here and actually things started to take off a little bit for the Hockey House pod?
Well, so the first memory I had was when I told my college roommates about it, because they'll tell it to you straight, right? And if they think it's a bad idea, they'll tell you it's a bad idea, and right away they're like, "Oh no, like you might be onto something there." And then I was like, "All right, that's the green light I needed." And I think that first year was tough because people started following the account. I think we got to like 3,000 followers on Instagram in year one, and it was fun. There weren't a lot of games to cover, and that was just really tough, but it let us get settled, and it let us really become experts in podcasting and social media and all that stuff. And so I want to say it was year two. In year two, when I was playing and I would get like comments lining up for face-offs, like, "Hey man, like love what you're doing. Like, when can I get
That's
on the
awesome.
pod?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, like that's cool. Like, Ryan Whitney has Spittin' Chicklets, but that's after his playing career. I'm lining up with draws and guys are talking to me about the podcast. Like, that was really cool for me. And so I got to do that for 2 years. I used to joke with people like, "Hey, I'm a defenseman going back on the puck. You better not hit me if you want to come on the podcast here." So tried to use it to my advantage as much as possible. But that was kind of the realization, talking to guys, talking to players, talking to coaches in the handshake line, and their appreciation for what we were doing really, sparked us to keep going.
Yeah, give it exposure, not just for the team, not just for the players, the whole league. I know family members, they love watching like their son, and now with women's hockey growing, their daughter, their neighbor, their cousin, whatever it may be, get a platform to talk about not just their team, but their experience, maybe talk about some family members. I get it at the national tournament sometimes. It's pretty cool to have people come up to you and say like, "Wow, this is a great platform." And you got to feel that firsthand and you started this off.
Right. And I think that's honestly the hardest part too. It's like when I talk to people and they're like, "Oh, long time listener to the show. I love it." I'm like, I just like forget that people actually listen to what we're saying. Right. Like when we sit down to record every night,
Oh, you're
I'm
telling
like,
me, man.
yeah, I'm like not even sweating it. And then I run into somebody and they're like, "Hey, like, remember what you said about this school?" And I'm like, "Oh my gosh." Like I forget that how good we have it.
Yeah, I found that out. First year at nationals, I had coaches coming up to me saying, "You're giving us bulletin board material." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" Like, "We heard what you said on the pool play show." I'm like, "I don't even know what I said on the pool play. What are you talking about?" But we forget, like, people like they listen here and they remember and they'll bring it up months down the line. And I'm like, "Well, I'm sorry if you took it that way, but I don't even remember saying that."
Yeah, no, that's the coolest. We had that happen last year with the boys at Binghamton. We fueled their fire. We were doing our prediction show, and we were like, "Binghamton's not winning this pool." And then, of course, what do they go and do? They win the whole thing. And it was
Yeah.
like it was funny to like joke about them with afterwards because like they know we're just doing this for fun. And
Yeah.
how cool is it for them that they can go into the locker room and have bulletin board material because there's some guys talking about them on a podcast. Like we
Yep.
weren't doing that 4 years ago.
I'm not naming the team. You can name the team because it's fun there. They won, but I won't name the team. I had a team one of the years during the game looking at me during the game because apparently I didn't give them enough hype during the pool play episode or the Nationals episode. I didn't give them the hype that they wanted or the support they wanted. So they were giving me darts during the game and in the lobby. I'm like, what is going on here? I'm like, my bad. I'm like, I'm sorry I didn't pump your tires enough, but my bad. If I didn't,
I know.
you don't realize that these people, they're not just the players, the coaches, the family members, the fans, they all listen to what we have to say and they got their opinion too. And they'll give it to you, like you said, with Binghamton.
Yeah, no, and it was again, it's an awesome reminder of like, wow, it is amazing how big of a community we've built and how many people are really following along to what we're doing.
Yeah, it's really good. You started it with Hockey House, so credit to you. But now at the Hockey House, you guys been to many tournaments. Before we get to specifically the AAU tournaments this year, have you already been to a couple of marquee moments? Beginning of September, you had something with the women's tournament. We'll get to that in a second. But throughout the years, there was I believe there was that outdoor game that like it first glance like, oh, that's an NCAA game, but it wasn't. It wasn't an NCAA game, and you guys had the honor to be there to cover it. If you're not there to cover it, what was your craziest experience so far working with the Hockey House pod and covering college hockey?
Yeah, so I mean, throughout the time we've been doing this, you can like see like the spikes and when we gain followers, when we gain listeners, and one of the turning points for that was that Frozen Finley outdoor game. They followed up the Stadium Series game in Raleigh, and they had NC State and UNC go head to head. And I remember getting a call from David Herman, who's our producer of the show, and he goes, Murph, like, what are you doing? Like, let's go book plane tickets to Raleigh for this. And I'm thinking, like, we want to go to nationals, right? We had a great time in Westchester last year. And so I'm thinking of like the skips, it's my senior year of college. I can't just skip every class. So I'm like,
Mhm.
you know what? I'm going to save that skip for when I want to go to nationals and get a couple extra days out of it. So Herm actually went down there and he shot it. And, we're thinking like, oh, maybe they'll get like 5,000 or 6,000 people there. It'll be cool, right? They get to use the ice the NHLers used. And boy, were we ever wrong. Like, 24,000 people was the
That's
estimated
insane.
attendance at
Yeah.
the end of the night. And so I'm sitting, there was no live stream that night. And so I am sitting by my computer, refreshing the Twitter feeds for both teams, just trying to get any updates so that, I can post about it. So it looks like I'm there with Herm. And fortunate enough for me, I had a family friend of mine at the game in the Raleigh area, and they texted me some videos. And so I was posting the videos, and then to see the traction that those got. And that was kind of like, I think that was a really eye-opening experience for a lot of people to realize not only are there college hockey teams without NCAA tags with huge fan bases, but college hockey in the South is legit. And because of the growth that the NHL has had in the Sun Belt, all these expansion teams, you talk about the Coyotes, the Ducks, the Lightning, the Panthers, like these people love hockey, and especially those people down in North Carolina.
It came out today. I saw Kevin Weeks posted. He's usually in the know. It's kind of been some rumblings of goes to credit how much hockey's been growing in the South. Atlanta might be coming back around in the NHL for the third time. Maybe the third time's the charm. Nashville has become a hockey town now. And that goes to now, like you said, college hockey South. Georgia has a huge fan base. They're getting a brand new rink in the AAU. And then you were down south in beginning of September. I believe you're checking out some of the beginning games. I believe it was D2 AAU. Embry-Riddle had a great showing in their opening weekend, correct?
Yeah, that was a blast. So when we looked at the schedule for this year, it was where do we want to start first, right? Because I spent so many years as a player, I don't have the ability to travel to places. So it was fun, to go to nationals and do that, and we could, mix in with the players. But looking at the schedule this year, before our work schedules, in the background took over, it was like, where can we go to start? And I remember Herm texted me and he was like, how about Daytona? Like we saw the video from Embry-Riddle last year on opening night when they beat Florida on a buzzer beater in overtime and the place was rocking. And that was like the only video we had. So like we kind of went on a limb and we're like, we're going to go there. And I cannot say enough good things about the Embry-Riddle hockey program. Not only that, but college hockey South as a whole. I think a lot of the times, from a podcast perspective, we like to focus on the Auburns and the Georgias and the Alabamas and the South Carolinas. To go down there and witness Embry-Riddle, a school that a lot of our followers had never heard of. And so we go down there and Ken Burns is the GM, Bob Joyce is the head coach of the D2 team. And they treated us with so much respect. They rolled out the red carpet for us. We were doing flight simulators during the day, and they were showing us all
Flight
around
school.
the campus. Right. And it was tough because I don't think we're ever going to go anywhere in the country where we're going to get that kind of treatment that we got for their first trip. And so to do that, and then on top of that, they're turning away people at the door. We rolled into the parking lot 2 hours before puck drop. There's guys tailgating. They're out in jerseys. The line is out the door. It was unbelievable. And so Embry-Riddle got the dub. They won 3-2 in the third period on a late goal, and that place was just rocking. And that was cool because it was underrated. Like we weren't expecting that. We knew it was going to be good. We did not know it was going to be that good. And so that just gets us more excited to go to these kind of hidden gems across, college hockey South and the AAU.
Yeah, like you said, you mentioned the big names that pop off, like the Tampas, the Georgias, the South Carolinas. But like in Florida alone, like you have the Embrys, you have the FAUs, you have the USFs, a bunch of different schools within that Florida that are making a lot of noise in college hockey. I know you guys were part of the big announcement, if not the big announcement, when USF got those unique jerseys. That went wild. That went all over social media.
It's so funny when that happens too, because I almost think not that like we've made jersey unveilings like a trend, like they were already a trend, but it seems like every team wants to one up the team before them, right? So the guys at USF, and we had heard some rumblings that we were going to get some beach themed jerseys out of College Hockey South for the Battle of the Beach. And we had no idea what they were going to look like. And so they came out and, being from New England, I'm on the tee on my way to the Red Sox game. And I'm like, oh my goodness, these are amazing. And so, save that for tomorrow. And the first thing I did when I woke up was fire off, the tweet of those photos and an Instagram post. And again, it's like, I don't know what people are going to love. And we reshared them, and the support that those got were amazing. And I think it just goes to show that people love college hockey in the South, and that this Battle of the Beach tournament is going to be very exciting down the road.
Yep. And it's all about I feel like not just hockey, every sport is adapting now the alternate jersey. Like football's going crazy with this year. Hockey, like 2 of the last 3 years had the reverse retros. So, and it's great now. Like, you're not just seeing the top, like the NCAA D1, the NHL teams. They're just getting their alternates. They're getting different combinations. Bunch of teams in AAU are getting different jerseys. I know Fairfield has another jersey. Farmington has another jersey. I'm pretty sure every team in the South has a new jersey. And it's a great way to market the team and get them noticeable. Like last year, the South Carolina, how funny it was, their jersey with just the name in the middle. But it got a lot of eyes on the team with just an alternate jersey reveal.
Yeah, too. And I think, the South Carolina team we give a lot of love to. And I loved seeing the jerseys that we got for the Savannah Classic. Those Georgia Tech ones with the white shells and the honeycomb were great. And, Florida comes out there with the gator skin jerseys. We saw a couple weeks ago, you mentioned even some of these teams that don't get a lot of love, like Florida Southern, the Mocs, they came out with some snake skin jerseys for opening night. And it's really cool to see. And I think that's something that we love about this level of hockey, because if I played at Boston College, I don't think the coach would let me design the jerseys, right? They have the athletic director, they have
the
an
whole
Under Armour
system,
deal, right? But at this level of hockey, the players get a lot of say. They want to wear a jersey that they appreciate. And so that's why we see these teams coming out with new jerseys every year. They know what they want it to look like. They know it's going to sell well. And like USF, they couldn't get enough jerseys in people's hands with that jersey order they did recently.
It's a huge trend. I'm happy AAU, the teams within AAU are hopping on the trend, because it's a big eye opener. Gets a lot of eyes on the program. And it's really cool for the players. Like you said, they have a big helping hand in it. But still talking about the South, the Columbus Classic, you had the women's tournament. Tampa ran through it. You guys, I don't know if you specifically were down there, but I know Hockey House was covering it. What happened down there? I know Tampa had a very successful run and wound up winning the Classic.
Yeah, so I mean, we could start there. Like, Tampa is legit, and I think the really cool thing is we spoke with the captains of Auburn and Georgia ahead of time. Hannah Knight at Georgia, Abby Lynn at Auburn, and thankful for Coach Jack Rosenhammer from Auburn, who set up those interviews for us. I was able to meet him in Chicago at one of the showcases in the spring. But on top of that, yes, Tampa rolled through, and I was talking to the girls after the interview, and they're like, we've seen Tampa's roster. They're legit. But hearing the feedback afterwards, and how the coaches were getting together afterwards, and the players were talking, and everybody was like, how can we make this a bigger deal moving forward? Right? Like, we can see the skill that Tampa has on the ice. Well, how do we get that skill at Auburn? How do we get that skill at USF, at Georgia, at Miami, at South Carolina now, all these teams? And I think it's just good for the game to see how legit Tampa was. I mean, they steamrolled everybody last weekend, but I think the consensus from everybody down there was, we want to be just like Tampa, and that would be huge for the women's game.
They set the bar, and Tampa's a great program. Whether it's their D1 men's down to D2, D3, now their women program has shown to be very strong as well. And you got women's hockey now, brand new to the AAU. You got the Upstate League as well. But now let's just stick with AAU. You had a season preview episode on the Hockey House pod. Recap some of your thoughts, and let's go over what's going to happen this year in the AAU. Hopefully we don't make too many people mad and we get confronted again.
Yeah. We'll try to stay out of the fire this time around. But just a couple of things. Like, one thing that sticks out to me, and I think it was the storyline last year, it was like, can Tampa get over the hump here, right? Like, how many years in a row are we going to go to nationals and be like, who's stopping Tampa? And it seems like you blink and they're on their way back to Florida on a flight. And so is this the year they get it done? I feel like the Tampa D1 team has had a tough schedule to start. They just swept Florida Gulf Coast, an old rival of theirs. Really cool to see, them going head to head. And I think that that's good that they have a challenging schedule to start. They've been challenged a couple times. They split with Alabama. And so to, get those mistakes under their belt now, I'm curious how that'll affect them down the road when we see them later this year in the AAU national tournament. That's kind of one of the things I'm keeping my eye on. And then I know, you specifically, know a lot about AAU in the Northeast, but it seems like my eyes are always drawn to College Hockey South, especially in that Division I level. It feels like one of those teams, we've seen Auburn out to a good start, Georgia off to a good start. It seems like, South Carolina, a team that everybody talks about. I saw the first College Hockey South power rankings and they were in the bottom. So I think it's College Hockey South is a beast. It could be a toss up there. And it's a matter of fact of, who from the Northeast is going to challenge those teams, come March.
I agree with the Tampa thing. They were the number one team going into the national tournament 2 years ago, got knocked out in pool play by Christopher Newport, upset in overtime. Then they lost again. They made it out of pool play and just came up short, I believe, in the quarters or the semifinals. But Tampa, what is it going to be the year that they break through? But I got to say, I think the strongest conference right now, and very impressively so this past weekend right now, is the Upstate Conference. They just steamrolled through the Empire this past weekend, and that top three of Niagara, Bing, and Bonnie's, they're still just as good, if not better, than last year. I got to say my team right now is out of the Upstate. I don't know which one, though. It's hard to decide. I know Bing might have lost a couple guys, but I like Niagara, though. I like Niagara out of that Upstate league. I really do.
They got a little bit of they play with a chip on their shoulder, and I know that seems very like basic hockey, but they're a team too. Like looking on social media, they're like, who wants it next, right? Like they will play anybody, anytime, anywhere. And you've seen the growth of just not only their AAU team, but across the board, the programs at Niagara over the years. I know they've done a lot of renovations to Dwyer Arena, and they were another team that hopped on the third jersey wagon before nationals with the Perps script jerseys. I was impressed by them, having played against one of Niagara's other teams in college and seeing how good they were. I thought, I'd see a significant step down from their, the team I saw at nationals, and no, they have a lot of skill on that roster as well. So that would be my pick of the teams Northeast. And I do like how this schedule this season, we see a lot of the teams from the South making trips to the Northeast, and we see teams from the Northeast going down South, because I think that gives you a little bit of a preview of what we'll see in March.
Yep, and I'll be calling one of them. Georgia comes up here to play Farmingdale, and that Empire Conference right now, two of the teams, Delaware and Fairfield, I'm looking at, I think they lost a little bit too much up top in terms of people who graduated, and it's impacting them early. Right now, they're both 0-3. Delaware has a tie. Farmingdale just had a crushing loss against Fordham in overtime, and that's. I played for them. I called their games, but Farmingdale has that tendency, that they'll be in a dogfight against a team that on paper they really shouldn't be against. But credit to Fordham, every time they play Farmingdale, it's always a battle. I remember last year, Fordham was down, I believe, 6-1 in the third period and pushed it to overtime. Wound up losing in overtime. But that's another one, like where Farmingdale, they'll look like barn burners, but then, they'll take the foot off the pedal and they have a loss on their schedule. And you think, how did that happen? Then I see a team like Quinnipiac. They were solid last year. I still think they're solid. I haven't really looked into them much to see if they lost any guys. But so Quinnipiac right now is a little unknown to me. But Fordham brings it every time they play, no matter who they play. Farmingdale has to get out of their own way. And Fairfield, Delaware, I just feel like they lost too much guys that graduated, and it's evident early. We'll see. I know it's early, but we can see how they bounce back.
Yeah, my big thing is, I had this on the notes too, in the predictions, is it seems kind of vague, but I would just love to see some new faces at nationals, right? It seems like we talk about the same teams a lot because they have, figured out the formula, how to get to Philly and compete for a national championship. I look at a team like High Point, who has made some noise early on in the year, and it's like, that's good for the game too. When we get some better competition, when we get these teams that, had that experience of going to nationals, got eliminated pool play, but they got a taste of it. And now they've gone back. They've had really good offseason workouts. They have a strong schedule moving forward. So, you never know who is going to sneak through the cracks at nationals and, who's going to come out on top. So I would just love to see some new faces. It's always nice to meet some new players, some new coaching staffs, and make some introductions. But I think that would be huge for AAU as well. The more teams that we get experiencing the national tournament, the better.
And that D2 in the College Hockey South, a team that they could have been like maybe a borderline. They have the talent, but maybe not the depth to be D1 is FAU down in what's it called in Division 2. I think they're a very strong team down in Division 2. They were always a competitor up in D1, but I think over the years, like I said, maybe they lost some depth, but like they still have high powered up top, but then after that might be a little bit of fall off. So that could be the make or break between D1 and D2. But I like FAU.
Yeah, and I think that was a team that left with a sour taste in their mouth from nationals last year. I think all they had to do was not lose to Buffalo by more than 3 goals, and it felt like I think they went down 4-1 right away, and so they had to claw their way back, and they just couldn't get one past the Buffalo goalie, and then they got eliminated. So they got to think about that. I know, we talk about the beach themed jerseys. They've had one for a while now. I think they're psyched for Battle of the Beach and to play against some local teams and have a lot of eyes on that. So that is certainly a team we're looking out for. Matthias Ware is a good player for them. He represented Argentina and the Amerigold Cup too, which was really cool to see. Again, we talk about the growth of hockey, not only in the South, but, that area of the world, the fact that Argentina is putting together a hockey team. So that was really cool to see, and love what they got going on at FAU.
Yeah, they're a very good program down south. South has the bulk of the divisions, whether it be 1, 2, or 3. You have Tampa with multiple teams. You got Georgia with multiple teams, Alabama with multiple teams. But as the season goes on, I guess we'll find out to see how strong our predictions are. I like the Upstate Conference right now. Empire starts to show a lot. And I think the College Hockey South, I think they're just going to beat up on each other all year. Because even if a D1 team plays a D2 team, you're getting a D1 type of game. You're still getting a battle. And I think they're just going to beat each other up the whole year.
Yeah, and that's the thing too and I think it's a little more woven into the culture down south, these rivalries. There's rivalries in the Northeast, but the fans down south, they don't care who's coming to town. If it's another SEC team, they're going to get up for it, and they're going to be loud, and they're going to give that team some home ice advantage. We'll see that when like South Carolina and Clemson go head-to-head, a D1, D2 matchup. The people in the rink don't care that it's D1, D2. They know it's South Carolina and it's Clemson, so they're going to get up for it. So I think that's exactly what they're going to do. They're going to beat up on each other all year.
Yep, it'll be an interesting season. The D1 competition gets shrunk down, but it intensifies despite it going down to 16 teams. D1 gets a lot more interesting because of every team is elite this year within Division 1. So from the Hockey House Pod, Mackenzie, Mac Murphy. Mac, thanks for joining the podcast. All right, I appreciate it. Look forward to one day hopping on yours. We could do the same thing on the Hockey House Pod, man.
Yeah, looking forward to it. And I think we'll have a couple more chances throughout the year to connect.
Yep. Going into the second half of the season, we'll recap the first half, see how close or far off, or if anyone's mad at us from our predictions just now. All right. So, Mac, thanks for hopping on. Have a good rest of the night. All right. I'll talk to you soon.
Awesome. Take care.
Jordan DeLuciano for the AAU Overtime Podcast. Thanks for joining us. Catch us tomorrow. Big announcement from the executive director. Can't mess that up. Big announcement from the executive director, Scott Solomon, tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern time. Don't want to miss it. We'll see you.